Ay, mija, abuelita's on her way and I still need to shop for the party.
No worries. Let's order through Instacart.
¿Insta qué?
Sí, llama. We can order groceries and more online and get everything delivered in as fast as an hour.
Everything for dinner? Carne, tortillas, limas, plátanos.
Claro. Anything else?
Just make sure the plátanos are ripe.
Get groceries delivered same day with Instacart so you have more time for family. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply.
Percolate on a particular mix of odd and inspiring news headlines in Wendy's Coffee House. Newsmakers with a penchant for the unknown, unexplained, and unusual share their experiences with UFOs, ghost encounters, near-death experiences, and more for your own unique blend of Wendy's Coffee House Curious. And now, here's Wendy.
It is so nice to be in a warm studio. Sometimes the studio is really, really cold. Today is like, okay, what happened? The energy shifted. Feng Shui. We'll be talking about that coming up. Okay, first, real quick, backing up. A lot of stuff's been happening. I have an interview coming up with a guest. This is a promotion, okay, promoting ahead of time down the pike. And it relates to this little quote. I'll bet you anything that China is spending some money checking this out. I'll bet you anything KGB Putin is spending some money checking this out. Senator Harry Reid with George Knapp, Las Vegas Now I-Team. And, okay, that's a quote from that and talking about the UFO stuff that they were doing, the Pentagon, the money that was being spent on clandestine, hidden UFO research, okay? So, which included Skinwalker Ranch and some really cool things with Bob Bigelow. But the experiencer researcher I spoke with said at one point there was an invitation, kind of a backdoor invitation, to go make a presentation and then make an appearance in China. Thrilled, the invitation was accepted. And so when that happened, there was a bunch of data that was downloaded, hacked from the phone, including tons of information detailing experiencer, UFO, that kind of stuff. So it was an interesting way of accumulating data without asking permission, but it shows somebody has an interest, and there you go. So I have a feeling that what he's saying is absolutely spot on in terms of there's a lot more research going on behind the scenes with this stuff that we don't hear about and we won't hear about because right now there's nowhere to go with it. Or, if you do go somewhere with it, then people jump to conclusions, and jumping is not good when it's involving a conclusion, right? So there you go. That was the interesting one. And then in case anything does happen here, we've got backup. On the moon, the Lunar Library, and that's just launched in the past week. I think Israel was trying to make sure that we, in case our demise happened and nobody knew, that this way we would be documented in some way, shape, or form what happened with the civilizations on Earth. And maybe you don't want to copy us if something bad happens. Okay, there you go. Denise Liotta-Dennis is my guest, and she does Feng Shui. And I've talked with her before. Dragon Gate Feng Shui is the website. But what we don't usually talk about when it comes to Feng Shui and how it affects us, and that's why the room might be warmer. I see some ceiling tiles are missing. Okay. Feng Shui. Denise deals with ghosts, and that's a reality for a lot of people. And so is there something, that you can do to figure out how to make the ghosts happy, get them to move on, get them to settle down? Denise Liotta-Dennis, my guest. And Denise, I've got your cheat sheet on this. Apparently you've had more than a few encounters with ghosts.
I have. I've been consulting 23 years, and when you consult long enough, you're going to encounter ghosts in a home or a business. It's just the nature of the business because we're dealing with energy, and they are energy.
Well, when we did the book with Fatal Feng Shui, that what not to do because the Hollywood folks had encounters,
right.
And there was a story in there with Sharon Tate.
Right. After all those murders happened, they did raise the house, and of course that's a brand new house with a producer. It's 5 times the size, but the neighbor next door evidently was having some crazy dreams about the murder. and I think Jay Sebring showed up at the edge of his bed. And so it's still quite haunted around there because of that horrific scene that happened, what was it, 60 years ago
Oh,
now?
man. Yeah, time. It's
Something like that. And so they will go, ghost and spirits, because they're energy, and they can sometimes cross that veil. They will hang around places, and this has been my experience with clients, where they are very attached, so they have a history. Or sometimes it's a bloody history, like in the case of Sharon Tate's land and that surrounding sort of, it's not a valley, but it's a huge drop-off, like a big ravine area, which also can be sort of mountains also, and those areas can also attract spirits. That's why some people get creeps when they're in the mountains, because it feels haunted, and sometimes it is haunted.
okay. Now, for most of us, when we're thinking about feng shui, or we're trying to at least figure out a game plan, a basic game plan, sometimes it will affect our lives, and we're automatically concluding, oh, I've done something wrong. My behavior is a problem. This other person is causing me issues. And what you say, by rearranging the house and rearranging certain elements around the house or inside the house, you can change that energy, and it's not about you.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people's perception of feng shui is the positive note, and it is. And you absolutely can extract energy by selecting a site that has a particularly good facing based on your when you were born and so forth, and you can arrange that space then to support you. However, some sites that will have a phenomenal. I'll just give you one sort of anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
Homes that sit empty for a long time, or homes that are next to yin energy. Everybody knows the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
Well, the yin is the dead energy, the cold qi, and that cold qi can be can sort of, like, if you will, trickle over into the house if it's next to a graveyard, or even, as odd as it sounds, a church, temple, or synagogue. If you're living close to these sites, they can make the house have what we call they can go into these specific degrees that we call death and empty lines, and another word for it is void. It's a degree, and they have different levels, but the most important levels and the significant levels that will affect people's money, their relationship, their health, is 180 degrees in the south, 270 in the west, 0 or 360 in the north, and 90 in the east. Now, in sacred geometry, some churches and so forth are set at these degrees because it creates a window in which spirits can come in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good for churches because people are in that meditative state, and they're thinking about angels, and they're thinking about Michael the Archangel, and they're thinking about whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that brings in those kinds of spirits. However, when it happens in a home or a business, people are not in that mode of thinking and feeling and so forth. And so then any kind of spirit, discarnate spirit, can come into those spaces, and they're not necessarily benevolent. And so there's the danger that when you have homes these certain degrees, crazy kind of things can happen. And I think I gave you a story about a couple that was in Fountain Hills, that a whole horrific sequence of events happened because they had their home. The front door was at 180 degrees. The back door was at 360. So they were on these void lines. And the craziest stuff happened like less than a year in moving into that house.
Well, what I read was you said, hey, guys, this may not be something that we can fix. And you don't usually do that. Usually you're...
No, I usually don't. And there was a couple of things we could do, like there's some copper, I think Slim Sperling makes these copper things, and you can kind of redirect the chi. You bury them in the ground. They're metal. It's a very kind of a unusual, probably an old technology from Atlantis, who knows. But anyway, they will redirect the chi. However, in this site, it wasn't possible to redirect it, and the home really should have never been built over these ley lines. Mm-hmm. And then they intersected right there in the master bedroom. And they had all kinds of crazy, well, the kids wouldn't sleep in their rooms. They were like, the boys were 7 and 9 at that time, and they saw ghosts, and they even told their parents.
Yes.
And it was a huge house, like 6,000 square feet. So the master was far from where the boys were. They would come flying in the bedroom when they see the ghost and sleep with their parents because they were so afraid.
Well,
and then the dad,
coming back to that,
yeah,
because that happens now with people. I've got some people who contacted me about this and saying the little girl sees ghosts, and we know it's not happening, and she's frightened, and she sees fire, and she sees all this, and I'm thinking, I have no idea what happened at that house. But if that's a problem, then that child should not be sleeping in that room. It's not that difficult.
Right, exactly. And then there's things that you can do, like people always say, okay, what if I have this door? What if I have this 180-degree door, or I have one of these significant doors? And so I'll talk about this in some of my other books as well, because it is a fairly regular phenomenon, especially when they bought a house that's empty. Then kind of ghosts can kind of, live there for a while, and then the family moves in. You can take these because they will go into these. They will sort of resonate with the graveyard or the church or the dead energy. So you can take them out of that by taking the door off its hinges, leaving it off like half an hour or whatever, hang it back on its hinges again, and it usually will take it out of that degree. Sometimes you can hang metal, like a good quality metal, like brass or bronze or whatever, near the door. Sometimes that will cure the door. But something needs to be done, especially these kids that are really afraid, because these kids would not sleep. And I'll give this example because this is one of the worst ones in my 23 years.
Okay, hold on. Now we have to take a break. Okay, that was a perfect, okay. I like perfect timing. Okay.
Okay.
Denise
okay,
Liotta-Dennis, we're talking ghosts, the real thing that does happen to a lot of people, and actually you can deal through Feng Shui. You can deal with this issue, so stick around. Denise is going to give us a few more tips. Wendy's Coffee House. You can check the podcast for some of the other shows that I've done, and actually Denise is on at least one of them that I know of, and we're talking Feng Shui today, but the podcasts are available Audio Boom or SoundCloud, and the big library is on Audio Boom. I'm putting them in both areas. Sometimes it's easier depending on what you've got, what app you've got. In the meantime, we went back to that story. This is, you said, one of the worst ones you've had in 23 years, this case?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I haven't seen one as serious as this one.
All right, and the kids were afraid, so they were bolting out of their room to go into
Right.
the other room.
Right.
And Mom and Dad, how were they dealing with it?
Well, this is so interesting because right away she tells me that when they first moved into this house, she was dizzy for 3 months. Who is dizzy for 3 months in a home?
Wow.
So right away she was feeling the ley line underneath. So a building should have never been built there. Okay, but fine, there it is, and she's dealing with. So in order to deal with that, she starts drinking. So when she's drinking, she is feeling less of this dizziness. Okay, so she becomes an alcoholic. Yeah, this is not a good story. I mean, this is not a good story. It doesn't end well either because as she's telling me these things, and her husband wakes up. This is what I was telling you before. Her husband wakes up at some weird time, like he sees it on the digital, it's almost like in Groundhog Day. 2, 2, 2. And the digital every single night he wakes up like clockwork at this weird time. She's dizzy. The kids are afraid. They see ghosts. And then all hell breaks loose when the neighboring property is jackhammering and disturbs these ley lines. Then it was bad enough. Then a whole sequence of events happened, and I met them right as this land was being prepped to be built, another 6,000 square foot house, and shaking up these ley lines because they were trying to, level out the land. It was very dynamic property. And eventually I said, you need to get out of this. I can't cure this because now there's too many things. Get out of it and get some relief for you and your family. They didn't. They were very attached to the house because he built the house.
Oh. So
they were very vested in the property.
Oh, no.
So what eventually happened is they divorced. And she became an alcoholic. He put her in rehab and whatever a couple times. Nothing worked. And I heard years later, that they, 2 years later, they divorced. And so it was a very unfortunate, but really everything happened first building on those ley lines and then disturbing it. And it's like putting pressure on the earth, right? And these are okay, like to meditate, and which a lot of people did, and they built temples and things over these powerful lines because it kind of raises our consciousness. But you'll go crazy if you're not ready for that or you're not guided through that.
Well, if you don't get a break.
And if you don't get a break. It's constant. This is just not meant to be the living. It's meant to be there like at certain special times and ceremonies and things like that, which they did on purpose, by the way. They knew this. It's part of that sacred geometry for these buildings, for human beings to expand.
Okay.
Otherwise, you go nuts like they did.
Okay. Okay. So we're not going to duplicate that, but so that gives you an idea of the intensity that this has if all of these points are pushed, and it's like a pressure cooker. Exactly.
And then, of course, the ghosts are taking advantage of this window of energy that's all around there, and then they're sort of haunting the people. Now, these ghosts did not move things. I've had clients where they've been in a home where they actually flush the toilet, turn the sinks on. In other words, we really want you to get the hell out because we don't want you in the space.
You're annoying us.
Yeah, you're annoying us. This is our house, and they'll do little tricks and things like that. So in that case, you really sort of need to do a clearing and ask them to go. And sometimes they will just immediately leave.
Okay, first, wait. Okay, before you do anything else like that, first, every plumber that we've ever had on talk radio has always said it's the phantom flush. So first, check with the plumber. Check to make sure that the plumbing is in working order and the phantom flush is not an easy solution. But if there are other paranormal things happening in addition to the phantom flush, then get yourself some help.
Exactly. They're turning on the faucets. They're opening and closing doors. This is another favorite. They open and close doors.
Yes.
They'll
flush the toilet.
Move things.
Is the big one, though.
They'll move
That's the big
stuff.
one.
Oh, I know I put that there. And they'll move things, just to let you know that they're there and that you're really invading my space and so forth. And see, the house has to be, this is our cue as feng shui consultants, it will absolutely be in one of these death and empty lines or in the flying star system, which are just numbers, okay? But numbers are everything in our universe, right? And these combinations, which we call them stars, this 2-5 combination creates another window in which they can slip in easily through the veil. And we can find it in the energy. So that flying star chart is every home, every building has one. Just once you take the compass direction, you have it, and we call it the chart, the energetic map of the house. So that map also tells us the possibility of ghosts entering into the space. If it's not ghosts, in other words, the house is yang enough, it might cause bankruptcy or money loss or loss of a spouse or something like that.
Most people consider that more important than ghosts.
Well, yeah, and that can happen too. Yeah, and that can happen too. Well,
bankruptcy is kind of like the big
mixed.
Yeah.
Like this couple had that as well. So now you're talking about really a hot mess.
Oh my! It just went from worse to worse.
Well, you see why I hardly ever tell people, escape. My teacher said it this way. Grandmaster Yap, who's my teacher in Kuala Lumpur, he said sometimes you have to escape to get good feng shui. And he's talking about these crazy examples like this.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen. This is very rare. Very rare.
Okay, well, that's a good news. I feel
that's the good news.
Yeah, I feel better knowing that. But
yeah, exactly. Now, the death and empty lines are not that rare. Like, for instance, a house sits on the market like forever. A house has been on the market for 3 years, nobody's whatever. They will absolutely attract ghosts and go into these death and empty lines that are more serious, and people come in behind it. They have to do all kinds of energetic stuff. We have to do all kinds of energetic stuff to get it back yang energy again so people can live there and thrive.
Yeah. Okay, well, and part of that is you can't always identify that. The lady who had the headaches for 3 months, somebody might have said, well, radon. They just disturbed the space, and it's probably, there's something seeping
right.
up. And so there's all these other elements.
Yes, you're right. That's right. It's a combination, and that was just everything culminated in that particular space because they were jackhammering, disturbing the earth, and literally shaking it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a major issue. Okay, so with that, there's a story in here because you just kind of glossed over Grandmaster Yap. Okay, so in this next break, we'll talk about his experience, but explain the relationship to him because he was your teacher, correct?
He was my teacher. Yeah, he was my teacher. He's passed away now in 2014, and I started studying with him in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He was very famous, made famous by the prolific writer Lillian Tu, who was his friend. And he came to Sedona, Arizona, to do 2 assessments. And do you want me to tell the story or you want to wait?
Yes. Okay, we got 2 minutes, so begin. Yeah.
And he was there, and often I was very fortunate to go with him on things that were out of class, and this is one of those things. I got to watch him do an assessment and whatever. And when he was at the hotel that night, a Native American Indian was at the foot of his bed. He was very psychic. He was very open to these things, and so this was not anything unusual that would happen to him, except it was a Native American Indian with this beautiful, headdress, and he was blown away. He called him a magnificent-looking fellow because he spoke like, English like the British. Mm-hmm. And the Indian asked him to please come release his people. They had battled, evidently, with a neighboring tribe, and it was a slaughter. And the next morning he got up and told the cab driver, he says, look, I've had this thing, and he told him, he said, oh, I know exactly where that land is in Sedona. Took him right to it. He did his little ritual ceremony, released the souls, and then, of course, he told us about it later that night at dinner. And then when we were in Malaysia later that year for class, he was telling a lot of students about his Sedona encounter with this Native American Indian who had these trapped souls. Because he knew that we were going to come across these kinds of phenomena with buildings and homes and things like that we might be asked as energy workers, because that's what we are, energy workers, to go and do some of these different things. So.
Okay, and I see that is what I think. There's so many people who acknowledge this, and it's just yeah. So get over it. This is how we deal with it. You know,
right?
Don't frighten me. Give me a solution. All right. So Denise Liotta-Dennis is my guest, and we're going to talk in the next. We kind of mentioned, bankruptcy, money issues. You have one client who is having some severe money issues. Of course, the client's in Las Vegas. Imagine that. So let's the next break, where money is the focus, because that's what people want to know. The bottom line: can I pay my way? All right. And if I'm not able to, then what's the feng shui doing that needs to be fixed?
Right.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and this is one of those things that they don't always address, the ghost issue. And for right now, it would be helpful if we would start talking about stuff like this so we could start dealing with it, and kids don't have to run out of the rooms trying to tell their parents that things are happening and their parents won't believe it. All right? Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Denise Liotta-Dennis, her website, dragongatefengshui.com. Several books. I mean, she's been doing this for 23 years, so she has a lot of ammo. The Hollywood Fatal Feng Shui we talked about earlier with the celebrity homes and that ghost stuff going on with Sharon Tate's with the area. But there's also feng shui that rocks the house, and that's how you can, do your own layout, floor plan. And if you're trying to fix a relationship, romance, sex, health, longevity, whatever it is, they're all there. But money is where people are usually, it's like a little magnet, and people would like to fix it. And the guy or gal who just won that $1 billion lottery jackpot said the reason, this is what I read in a news story, so I'm hoping it's right, somebody else cut in front. She allowed somebody else to cut in front. And so that was such a generous, kind thing to do. And the payoff was huge. So I'm letting people cut in front, all right? Just there's going to be something. There's going to be some good karma. And it doesn't have to be $1 million, but it would be nice. So this is Vegas. And you've got the client in Vegas. And, of course, there's a money issue, which is perfect.
Right.
What happened?
She lived in this beautiful old neighborhood in Las Vegas, like had the mid-century modern homes. And she came to one of my lectures and then one of my classes, and she said, okay, I like what you said. I've never heard anybody talk about classical feng shui. I've never even heard of classical feng shui and some of the stuff that you're talking about. So I want you to come look at my house. And then she began to tell me that she went bankrupt in the house. In fact, the house went into foreclosure. She bought the house a few years before and went into foreclosure. She was so determined to have that house. When it went up to auction, she went to the auction and she got it, and she got the house back. Well, the same things were happening again. She was a lot of money lost, and she said, I'm tired of it. I want it. So came to the house. She had 4 doors with the death and empty lines, the void lines that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
4 doors, so I had to solve that. She said, Denise, I have no money. I can't get a carpenter because this house is making me bankrupt. Well, first of all, I told her, well, you have a ghost right over there in that room. She goes, oh, yeah, I know. That's the room that I rent out to the flight attendant. And I said, okay, how long is that good? How long? She said, oh, I've been aware of it. She was very, naturally tuned into it.
Yeah,
It didn't bother her. She just thought, okay, it's a friendly ghost, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, that's a problem. That's a problem because it's causing this house, is now it's becoming really yin. Now you've got all these doors that are in this yin dead void energy that can cause money loss. And she said, well, then she tells me more about the money loss. And she said, well, I can't afford to have a carpenter come and change these doors. I said, okay, well, let's take them all off their hinges, which we did, and do a few other things. We changed that energetic map that I talked about by opening up the skylights to heaven and earth exchanges chi. We left those all open for a couple of, because you can do this in Vegas. You can't do it in Houston, but, you can do it in Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can't. You have to think of other things, and we have other tricks we use. But anyway, so that heaven and earth exchange chi. It changed the energy because the pool was also an issue. It wasn't just this. It's never just one, Wendy. It's always like a checklist of things that is like, oh my God, and they get so desperate that they call somebody or they reach out to somebody. And the pool was also activating bankruptcy. So all of this stuff, the poor girl, she was so determined. I have to give her kudos for that. She was so determined. She did everything I asked her to do. And we did the skylights. We changed all the doors, and we asked the ghost. I said, "Okay, the ghost needs to go. Okay, she's not causing any problems. She's not doing any pranks. She's not doing anything to harm you. However, she's dead energy, and dead energy doesn't bring money. No. And yang energy. You need yang energy to bring money. So we asked the ghost to leave. The ghost left. She was attached. She'd been there for 35 years. She loved it, loved it, loved it. Happy. That's what happens too. They can have a happy life there. And they won't leave.
They can be a
and
squatter.
They won't leave. Yeah, and you got to ask them to leave. Hey, look, your family is waiting for you. Usually, it's just a few little things like your beloved husband's waiting, your beloved grandmother. People are waiting for you. Look at them; they're waiting for you, and then they will go because sometimes they don't know that they can go because they're so focused on that property and that land and that energy. Yeah. Well, after she did all of these things and it was like she had this idea she was trying to pitch. This is what she was reaching out for. She had this multi-million-dollar idea. She was a retired model. She was absolutely gorgeous. She had this great multi-million idea that she was going to pitch to the Chinese. Well, she finally did that, and she did really well. And then she met a partner, which was one of her things, too. That one had a really good result because she did everything, and she got to keep her great little house and not experience that huge cycle of money loss, bankruptcy, and all those kinds of things that she's experienced twice in that house.
Okay. See, that's a big deal. Sometimes people move into a new space and they start having relationship issues and they start, the money issues and things just start tanking. And it isn't between them, but the more that it happens and they start blaming each other. And that's where it kind of, a ghost, in my opinion, will take advantage of the energy, not because they have because they're mean, it's because it's a buzz. It's an energy. It's like, oh, cool, drama, yay, popcorn, ghost popcorn. Let's have a seat.
Right. Yeah, and I just want to say, too, also that sometimes people in the New Age community or people who are very spiritual think it's cool to have a ghost in the house. Yeah. It is not cool because it will cause a host of, because, this is one of the things in Feng Shui, it causes a host of issues because it's dead chi, it's dead energy. This is not your spirit guides. Your spirit guides is a totally different thing. Let's say you work with Mike Archangel, or you've got your grandmother as one of your guides. Your spirit guides are your spirit guides. They do not haunt you, do not stay in the house. Those are perfectly wonderful. I have my spirit guides, okay? But they don't live there and cause havoc because they're not dead chi. They are just to guide you as you're in meditation or through your life, and they're not haunting your house. They're not attached. There's no attachment to that land or that house or that history.
Or the energy.
And sometimes that's a bloody history, right?
Yeah.
And they're hanging around, and they're causing havoc in your life. And also this lady was experiencing, and she was young, experiencing some health issues. So eventually, because it's dead chi, it'll start affecting the body. Now, it takes longer to affect the body than it will the money issues and the relationship issues, okay? Mm-hmm. But eventually, over time, it will start affecting the body. So and she should not have any help. She was only like 35, 36 maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so she shouldn't have had any kind of these issues. So they were coming into play. In addition to the most disturbing, which of course is her losing money and going into foreclosure, which was disturbing to her. Yeah. And everybody, like you said, everybody.
Well, then you can't pay for the health issues, okay?
Yeah. So you don't want any of these things. Like if you when I tell people this, like, okay, if you live next to a graveyard, okay, I notice you live next to a graveyard. You can get depressed. It's going to start affecting your health. It's going to start affecting your relationship. You feel lethargic because you're almost. It's like humans. We're almost resonating. We will start matching and aligning with that energy that we're close to. We're next door to it. We're going to start resonating over time. Same with the church. Okay, it's yin energy, and that's purposeful, but it's not for the houses of the living. People who are in the land of the living, right? They need to have that yang energy. So it might be cool living next to a church or a temple or a synagogue, but over time you might start feeling yourself being depressed or no energy or whatever. You'll start resonating with that energy.
This is really interesting. We were looking at a house, and it's by a cemetery, and it's it's like 5 acres or so, a really cool property. And at some point, it looks like the owner was deceased, and it was passed on to somebody else because they have renovated it, and of course, upped the price by about $100,000 and all sorts of stuff. But the inside of the house now looks like a mausoleum. And I
Oh,
think
wow.
that's kind of the ghost last laugh.
Oh, my gosh.
Whoever
Yeah.
invested in that property,
Right.
was kind of influenced. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's like the white marble and the gold, all the gold, different kinds of ornate gold work and fixtures.
Oh,
I'm
my
like,
God.
this is frightening. But
Right.
at this, so to me, that's whether it makes sense to anybody else. I
Yeah,
think
and I don't want you changing that. One of the other ghost stories that I have with a client is the son inherited like that. He inherited the house. The mom had lived, his mother and father had lived there in this part of Phoenix, Arizona, like 50 years. So he gets the property, and the ghost was there. She didn't want anybody in the property or making any changes, or you talk about making any changes, like you talk about the gold, whatever.
Yeah.
She didn't want any changes. So he tried to rent the house like for 3 years, and the ghost literally ran everybody off. So he said, okay. He threw his hands up. He said, okay, I'm going to sell it. Well, that's when my clients come in, and they're very sensitive, and I've been consulting with for years. And they said, okay, Denise, there's a ghost there. Can you come and can you come do your thing? And
Okay,
then
hold on.
Let's
take a break. Let's take a break because
Okay.
we're going to find out what magic you worked. All right, because this is I guess this is the crux of the matter. Somebody says, I've got a house. I want to do something with it. It's got a ghost. Denise, help me. All right. We're going to come back and find out what Denise does.
Okay.
Wendy's
Okay.
Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio. Okay, if you've ever lived in a haunted house, and it may not even have been that the house was haunted. You might have had a visitation. It might have been like, a little ghost flyby or fly through or, I don't know. We didn't get into ETs yet. But anyway, so the house has a certain energy about it that could attract the entity. And then your energy is going to kind of bring another wild card into that. So when this happens, if you can ahead of time get a little diagnosis of, okay, I know this house has some energy. I walked through it. I felt it. I sense it. I know it's there. And then Denise says, well, so good of you to notice. This is what we're going to do. Is that how it starts, Denise? Okay, I mean, not quite like that, but close.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened with my clients, though. That was the house that they knew right away. They said, okay, they always call me. Sometimes they call me before they buy the house. Sometimes they call me right after they buy the house. I pretty much trained them to say, okay, let me have a look at it before you actually sign on the dotted line. But they bought the house, and they loved the house. They loved the neighborhood, and it was quite wonderful part of a Phoenix area, an up-and-coming area where they're taking these older homes, again, this mid-century modern, but they were done in these little pockets, and it was absolutely lovely with the little outdoor patios, which you can use almost 12 months out of the year in the Phoenix area. And so they bought the house, and then she starts telling me the history. She said, oh, the son told us that, he tried to rent it for 3 years, and then he decided to throw his hands up and sell it, and they bought the property because they weren't afraid of the ghost.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were afraid of the ghost. And she knew it was female, and I said, okay, so as soon as I come in, I tell them, there's the ghost. Yep, there's the ghost. And what are your plans for the house? And I said, we've got to, do the feng shui, and then we're going to talk about some remodeling. So we talked about where to place the things and, the energy of the fire or the stove and the rooms that they're going to live in. But I said, first, the issue is that we have to, communicate with the ghost here. And I could tell right away she was benevolent. She just could not give up after the 50 years. So I channeled the energy. So I always ask permission before I do this because, first of all, if it's an evil energy, I don't deal with that at all. I said you're going to have to call the priest, or you're going to have to call somebody that's their area. I mean, it's almost like that movie Michael. That's not my area.
Yeah.
I don't deal with that. But the spirits who are just there because they can't leave it, that's a different issue. So I decided, first of all, ask permission. Can I speak to the person? She was so happy that someone was going to listen to her, and so I'm channeling this energy, and they're in the session while it's happening. We're in the house. We're sitting on the floor. The house is empty. And she's telling me and showing me all these pictures of what a happy, happy life she has. And that's why she couldn't leave it. She talked about all the parties they had. And this was the time like in the 40s and 50s where they had the cocktails all the time, right? And so she's showing me all these images, these very happy things where all the neighborhood and the whole cul-de-sac were together and so tight. And then little by little people died, and she was one of the last ones. And she even showed me an image where her husband had carried her over the threshold, and they were so happy and so in love. So this man was very lucky to have parents like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I communicated to her, and she says, well, I said, you're in the house, and I said, your family is waiting for you. I said, especially your beloved husband. They're all waiting for you, and you've been here, and you've been stuck here. And I said, so then she agreed to go back to them and whatever. And she says, by the way, I like these people, and I like their plans, because we had the floor plan there of all the changes they were going to make, the remodeling and knocking this down and knocking that. She said, by the way, I do like and approve of what they're doing in their remodeling, because we were completely changing the feng shui of this, changing the walls, moving the stove, knocking this out. It had a little atrium, all kinds of stuff like that, to adjust the feng shui because it was so old. And she approved of all that. And then she did leave, and my couple also owned a business. They had this really cool where they made this kind of rustic furniture and stuff, and just beautiful metals and woods and stuff. And so that was important. They had a very prosperous home with the prosperous energy, because their business, this is what they made. This is how they made their livelihood. So all check. She approved of all of it. She left, and they could feel it immediately as soon as she left the site and was off, and no longer there to trick people, which is what she did. I mean, she didn't do it to my people, but she did do it to the other people, and they left.
To get them to leave, yes.
Get them to go, and they did. They finally left. So that was another one. It was adjusting the energy, changing things around, and then in this case, communicating with the spirit, saying, this is not really your home anymore, and people are waiting for you on the other side. So
okay. So what happens though with this kind of stuff is there are some things that you can look at and say this could be a potential issue, because you look at a few things like you said, empty for long periods of time. That could indicate money problems. Whether the ghost has a history, which this woman lived there for 50 years, so she had obviously had a history. I went out to the Stanley Hotel, and I tell you what, the ghosts there are all really happy. I don't know that anybody could convince them to leave because they're still partying.
Exactly. Well, one guy who did an inspection, this was so funny in the Phoenix area, he called it bankruptcy smell. And what he meant was, when a house stayed empty for a long time and it had gone into foreclosure or something like that, the energy just went kind of dead. And he'd go in and he'd do the inspection. Let's say it was up for, the bank wants whatever inspections, and they're checking everything. It's been empty 3 or 4 years and it's sitting there, which is not so great in 117-degree weather that they can get up to in the summer in the Phoenix area. So it would have this smell like mildew. Now, it's dry there.
Yeah.
Okay? So like Houston, mildew is everywhere, because it's a semi-tropical climate, but not in Phoenix. So it would have this smell like it had mold or mildew in it, like it had been rained, the water had sat there. Yeah. And so he called it the bankruptcy smell. That was his term, not mine. And I said, oh, my God, that is so funny. He said, because I was looking at a house. He was there doing the inspections for a client who wanted me to preview it because they were considering buying it. And I said, okay, we need to do some serious shifting of the energy, because this house had actually gone into bankruptcy. And I told him what the guy said. He said, yeah, it's got the bankruptcy smell, because he saw it so much. Isn't that the craziest thing? And it smelled like mold. So it smelled like dead.
That's
dead.
Amazing. Yeah, I was going to say
old
rotting.
Chi.
Rotting.
Like rotting old chi. And so that has to be switched if you or I are going to go take that place and thrive. Otherwise, we'd lose money. It's a bankruptcy energy.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It's a telegraph. It's a telegraph. It's telling you. Okay, so you're writing a book now that is going to help people if they're going to go in their own in feng shui business?
Yeah, well, I've got 2 new ones on the burner. One I'm writing to help people who consult and do feng shui, so I've got a lot of these ghost stories, because you need to be aware that if this is a business that you want to consult in, you are going to come across, and you can't really be afraid of ghosts and spirits, because you consult long enough, you're going to see them.
Right.
You're going to see them. You're going to have to deal with them, with people, having them. Another book I'm doing is because we're getting ready to have a major shift in energy. This is planet-wise. We call them periods, and they're 20-year increments. And we're leaving period 8, and we're entering in 2024, period 9. So everybody needs to adjust their home a little bit once we enter in these new, what they call major capital changes. And that's coming up, so I'm writing a book about how to adjust your home to get the best of the best for the new upcoming period 9, which is purported to be a highly spiritual. Like period 8, that 20-year increment, 2004 to 2024, was a time of what we called uncovering untruths. The energy is so noble in the 8 period that things that are covert will come forward. So things that are hidden, like all the things that are hidden, all the crimes against humanity, or which are kind of coming
unfolding.
or they're unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
So that then when they do unfold, and we enter in this beautiful age of this, it's called fire energy. And it's very spiritual. We will then have the opportunity to expand our conscience as humanity. So those capital changes are really important. And then, so I'm writing a book about period 9 and like how to adjust your home for period 9. So always have 2 or 3 in the burner. And
okay, all right. Well, at least we've got something to look forward to, light at the end of the tunnel. And we'll talk before then. Okay.
Okay.
2024. Yeah, we'll be talking a lot sooner. Denise. All right, my guest is a master of Feng Shui practitioner, Denise Liotta-Dennis, and you can check out her website, Dragon Gate Feng Shui. Hey, thank you for talking. I appreciate your insight.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's always a joy to spend time with you.
Okay, and if you have a ghost, you can call Denise, but it could be the Phantom Flusher. Call the plumber first, just to make sure. All right, and good luck, whatever the case. Thanks for listening. Wendy's Coffee House, KCMO Talk Radio.
When things feel a bit chaotic, Instacart helps deliver milk and sausage. Add a little life to your cart. Get stuff from literally all your stores, from baby wipes to albacore. Add a little life to your cart. Instacart helps get your groceries. Your first 3 deliveries are free.
Download Instacart. Add life to cart. Terms apply.
Football game. I'm at the grocery store.
What?
I'm at the combination football game and grocery store.
Wait, you're at the football game
What?
and the grocery store?
Nah, I'm at the combination football game and grocery store. Groceries through Instacart, delivered to my door. I don't have to choose between football and the grocery store.